Your life.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in for another episode of Beyond Code. This is episode 18, and we have with us a very interesting person, Bharat. Bharat, as we were discussing, we've heard about stories about engineers turning marketeers. Today, we have a marketeer who has turned engineer. Thanks a lot, Bharat, for joining us today. Just to give a quick intro about Bharat, Bharat currently is the Director of Engineering for Sutherland Conversational AI team. He manages a team of skilled developers dedicated to implementing cutting edge NLP solutions. He is known and really loves the angle of really going deep in terms of customers' problem and then ultimately solving it through research, engineering, and his overall experience of customer success. He comes from and hails from Great Lakes, a well-known institution in India, and is a gold medalist from there. Comes from a background of doing a BBA and an MBA, and today he is now leading a team of engineers. Bharat, thanks a lot for joining in, and really extremely ecstatic to have you today, and really exciting to learn about you and about your journey and what you are doing next. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks, Jay. I think I am really excited for this particular podcast. So looking forward to share my knowledge on how I actually started my career in the field of engineering.
Right. So, Bharat, whenever we start this conversation, the first thing that we basically get people on is to basically take them back to the years and their early stages, right? So, while I've become a parent recently, so I understand that a kid has to be naughty. So, what's your story? What would your parents say that Bharat was a guy who used to sit first in the class, in the first bench, or was he a gold medalist from nursery, or was he someone who used to basically be out doing a lot of maybe writing, I will do my homework 100 times in a day in KG class, in kindergartens? What was Bharat like?
That's a very interesting question to begin with. So as a child, I would say, to put it simple, I was a very calm person. I would say I was not that notorious troublemaker. I was that very quiet and reserved child. You can say I was on the introvert side. Uh, Maybe from an academic standpoint, I was not the topper of the class. I had a natural aptitude for subjects like science and maths. Those two subjects I did really love. I did find great joy in solving mathematical problems, conducting my own little science experiments. In my spare time, I was that kind of childhood who would look for a math class or for a science project. However, from an academic standpoint, it was not a very smooth journey for me. I did struggle with language related subjects. While I did excel in math and science, I found it very challenging to grasp literature and language. As my brain was more wired towards maths and science, but over time I did pick up language and literature, and that also helped me over time.
So you're fairly a good boy from the onset. That's what
Yes.
I would say, right?
Yeah.
So you're not the guy that your parents would. So you're the Sharma ji ka ladka somewhere, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's interesting, Bharat, to know, and I think you've carried that across. But beyond, when I go beyond your major early childhood days, when exactly were you basically discovering tech? What experience that you have? When was computers, and was computers mesmerizing back then as mesmerizing it is for you today? How's the love with tech back then?
I think probably I would have started using, or I was exposed to computers way back in 2002 or three, maybe when I was in grade two. During that time, I was introduced into the world of web design by my dad. So that was probably in 2003, I would say. During that time, my dad wanted me to design a website for me. So he introduced me to a tool called as Front Page. For those people who are not familiar with Front Page, during that time, you could basically design a website like how you would design a Word document. So during those days, I was experimenting with web designs, I would say. Those were really basic websites. I would just put, content in there, and then, I would play around with hyperlinks, and I was basically exposed into the world of computers during that time. So that's how my journey with computers kind of began, I would say.
Sorry, yes. So when we look beyond basically your love with computers, and I assume that was not the love at first sight kind of an approach. So you decided to enter the world of marketing, right? So I assume your dad was your home also the kind of the place that people say engineering or doctor or else there's no career, or how was things when you decided to enter the world of marketing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my decision to enter into the field of marketing was actually because I was involved more into web design and development. So I realized over time that, just knowing how to create a visually appealing website was not just enough, right? Because one of the most significant challenges when I encountered when designing websites was actually content, right? I came to understand that without valuable content, without engaging content, even the most beautifully designed website would actually struggle to attract visitors. So this realization was kind of a turning point in my journey. I began to appreciate the role of content in making sure that, you know, I mean, I began to appreciate the role that content played in online success, I would say. So I understood that, basically by creating content that resonated with the audience, it was basically an art and science. And that is when I kind of realized technical skills was not just enough to basically build a very successful website. You need to understand human psychology, you need to understand communication, you need to understand marketing. At the end of the day, you need to make sure that your website is able to attract visitors. And that is when I kind of decided, okay, I want to excel in this particular field, because with marketing I'll be able to provide more value, right? And that is when I decided I need to expand my skills beyond the technical skills. So it was not just about knowing CSS or JavaScript or HTML, but I need to understand or basically learn something that would basically complement my existing knowledge. So that is when I decided that I should enter into the field of marketing, and that is when I I understood that marketing was that missing piece of the puzzle, right? To basically create attractive, business via website. So with marketing, obviously there's a lot of things when it comes to web development. There are things like SEO, content strategy, social media marketing, and I decided that I should enter into this field so that I can complement my knowledge on web development. So that is basically my journey of why I decided to enter into the field of marketing. So
So I understand that while you understood that the product need to be sold, and at the end of the
mm,
day, you need sellers to really buy. So was that also an important decision that okay, end of the day, marketing is gonna give you a lot of money, and at the end of the day, you're gonna earn more, or was it completely that no, I'm gonna be more closer to the revenue, and I as a person would like to be more closer to the customers.
I think uh, I think the way how I would put this, I think we should be more close to the business side. So it's not just about technical design, but also doing marketing, and also revenue is also important at the end of the day, right? It's not just about hosting a website. You can have maybe a million visitors, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure that that business is profitable. So that is when I decided that I should be more close to the business side of things, and marketing was that first step for me.
Interesting. So now that you enter the college, right, and you join the BBA course, you get the hack of marketing as a subject. What are the learnings that you, for example, had during those days? So, for example, when I would say that I'm an engineer turned marketer. So today I go back and say that if someone's gonna talking about React JS, or someone's gonna talk about CS, I am not blank. I understand tech. So tomorrow, even for example, when you're talking about embedded systems, as I come from communications background, I understand why 5G, how does 5G work and how do 4G work. So those conversations are a little bit of like-minded, and that's where some of the developers like having a conversation with folks like us. What's your story? When you, for example, look at BBA as a subject that you learned, how exactly are you implementing this right now what are those learnings that you currently deploy into action right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think my BBA in marketing, I would say it was an eye-opening experience. I think, like I mentioned, I was an introvert. I was not that one person who would like talking too often, right? I was a very introvert person, and unlike some of the other programs, right, our coursework was not limited to just textbooks and lectures, right? And if you want to excel in the field of marketing, you need to have practical real world experience that I believe, uh, is actually very important. So one of my pivotal aspects of my, BBA journey was the opportunity to engage in internships. So I did my internship with two companies. The first was a renowned FMCG company, and the second was a real estate firm. So these internships kind of exposed me into the multifaceted nature of marketing, I would say. So it's not just about theories and concepts, but also understanding the nuances of how marketing strategies are kind of implemented in real world businesses, right? And one of my most transformative experience during my BBA was actually me venturing into the space of events and marketing, an area that actually made me quite uncomfortable, I would say. I do remember I organized my first TEDx event back in 2015, right? The responsibility was good during that time. It actually pushed me out of my comfort zone. I had to basically talk to a lot of people. I had to improve my speaking skills. I had to improve things like my leadership skills. I had to plan out things. So all of these things kind of made me very uncomfortable, but growth happens when you basically step outside your comfort zone, right? So organizing events was basically a, a pivotal point in my journey in my career, I would say. I also actively participated in volunteering activities during my BBA journey. They also instilled in us sense of social responsibility and empathy. These kind of qualities kind of shaped my character, I would say. And at the end of the day, you have to make positive impact on people's life. So that was what marketing was all about. So all of these kind of soft skills I developed during my BBA journey. uh, so that's how I kind of grew as a person during my college days, I would say.
So beyond BBA, I think post I understand that internship seems to be more of things that brought you closer to the fact that how reality works, right?
Hmm.
Post this, what was your decision after doing the MBA? Can you just give us a walkthrough? And then obviously you went on to do masters. What was your transition from coming out of a BBA college? How exactly did you went about deciding your next steps in terms of your career?
That's a good question. So during my final year of my BBA, I had the privilege of working on a internship project where it actually involved conducting a very comprehensive survey, right? So it was during this process that I actually delved into the field of statistics. So there was this particular process where I had to basically collect information, I had to analyze and then interpret data. Not only so, I was introduced into the field of statistics during my final year, okay, of my BBA. And what truly set me on the path towards pursuing my master's degree was actually the introduction of this online platforms like Coursera and edX. So one of my professors, he kind of recommended that I actually need to explore this platform because he felt that I have to basically enhance my understanding of statistics and also improve my skills. So there was this one particular course which was offered by Johns Hopkins University. It was an introduction to statistics course. That course gave me a lot of insights. I kind of realized that there's a lot of things for me to learn. Okay. So what happened is during my final year of BBA, I did learn a lot of things, not just in the field of statistics, but also into the field of data science. And that is when I kind of realized, okay, maybe I should learn a lot more. I have to expand my knowledge to more technical skills, and my combination and the combination of my passion for statistics and the transformative experience of this online learning, it actually kind of led me to consider the possibility of pursuing a master's degree. So that is when I kind of decided, okay, I have to basically continue my education. I need to deepen my knowledge. I need to basically expand my knowledge in the field of statistics. So that is when I kind of decided that I should pursue my master's. But also very important thing is that the job market was also evolving very rapidly. it was also becoming very, very competitive. I observed that many employees were actually, placing a higher value on advanced degrees. So a BBA was not just sufficient enough for me to kind of get into a good job in the field of statistics and analytics. So that is when I decided, okay, I should do a master's degree with a sole focus on data science and analytics. So
Interesting. So I think statistics got you to the world of basically the tech that you are currently building, and that's what I understand. To be honest, folks like us enjoyed the hours of when we were doing our masters, and that's where we got introduced. But I think that's the pivotal point for you so far that got you into the career, correct?
yeah.
And also, it's that because just wanted to understand, conversations got you into conversational AI. The conversations in the surveys, was that the trigger point that you would say as an
Not really.
individual?
Not
Okay.
not really. Maybe conversational AI had nothing to do with my marketing experience, I would say. I think it was more about solving the problem. So it's a little bit. I mean, I did possess both the skills on the technical side when it comes to conversational AI, as well as I did have a good understanding about language and marketing. So I think those two skills kind of combined me to get into the field of conversational AI, I would say. So.
Interesting. Cool. Now that you're out, done from your basically internship, you realize that you need to go ahead and do masters. What's been your experience back in terms of basically doing your masters there? What has been your major takeaway which still stays with you when you look at the journey that you spend there in that institution?
Okay, well, that's a very uh, tough answer, but I'll try to answer it. So back during those days, right, I think data science was rapidly emerging, and it was basically a very transformative field. There was this particular article during that time in HPR. The role of a data scientist is it's the sexiest job of the 21st century. So I was also attracted by that, I would say. So data science and statistics, it was basically a very fascinating field, I would say. So it was this fascination with statistics and data analytics that led me to explore educational opportunities and ultimately led me to Great Lakes. So Great Lakes was one of those few institutions that during that time was offering a very specialized analytics program that kind of aligned perfectly with my aspirations, I would say. So they did have a curriculum, and they did have the faculty and the deep experience in that particular field, I would say. And I felt during that time, that is a place where I could acquire the skills and knowledge necessary to excel in this particular field. However, a very important thing is that I think it's not just about the academics. Where if you have to enter into the field of data science and analytics, it's not just about the academics. It's also about the environment and the people that actually surround you, right? That actually made a difference. So one of my, most striking aspects of my MBA journey at Great Lakes was actually the rich diversity of my peers. So I was, I had very exceptionally talented individuals, each, hailing from different backgrounds, right? So some of them had worked in the IT sector for many years. Some of them are coming from different industries. So it was truly a melting point of talent and perspectives that kind of shaped my journey, I would say. So many of my peers, they did come up with very substantial technical experience. So I had a lot of learning from my peers. So it was not just from lectures, I would say, from my MBA courses, right? So it did also, firstly, I would say it actually broadened my horizon. So each day I would have the opportunity to learn not only from my faculty but also from my peers. So we did engage in discussions that actually ranged a wide range of topics, industries, perspectives, which I would say provided a very holistic view of things, not just about analytics but also about how different industries operate, and then about in actually a very different context. Also, since we had this very collaborative and innovative learning environment, right, we were basically challenged to think beyond our comfort zones, I would say, right? and they also kind of helped me prepare for the real world. So my time at Great Lakes, I would say it not only equipped me with my technical skills, but also it actually made me realize, okay, there's a lot of other things happening across different industries. I am it made me realize there's a lot of opportunities out there in the market. So yeah, so in short, I would say my motivation to pursue an MBA at the Great Lakes was kind of driven by my passion for statistics and data science at that time. However, it's not just the academics that got me into this field. It's also the learning experience that I had from my peers that kind of shaped my career, I would say.
Interesting. So majorly, if I would look back and understand that more or less that when you are inside your masters, it's more of the kind of conversations that really basically it's more of five people that you're interacting with is making you the average of those five, right? And
Yes.
somewhere and those five quality peoples, if then you become equivalent to that of a quality people, that's what Great Lakes has brought into your DNA at this point.
Yeah. I think I maybe just one point I want to add here is obviously when I did my
Sure.
BBA program, right? I had peers who were very similar to me because most of them had come out of school and they were pursuing their undergraduate studies. So most of my peers were very similar and they kind of possessed very similar skill set, I would say. But when I did my master's, the journey was completely different, right? I was the younger, I was one of the youngest in the batch. I had obviously most of my peers had work experience. They came from different backgrounds. They had different perspectives, and masters was basically. I mean, doing my masters at Great Lakes was, I would say, a very transformative experience for me.
Interesting. Now, during your master's days, I assume you also got exposed to the world of Python, right?
Hmm.
And how exactly did you land it there? What wasn't that? So wasn't that as difficult as assuming that okay, I'm a marketer, I'm gonna do an MBA, but at the end of the day, I'm writing a basic line of code. What's your and weren't you basically some people around you might be saying, "What are you doing, man? You're doing something else. You're doing something else in the morning and doing something else in the night." What's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's the very interesting story, I would say. So to begin with, my decision to delve into the world of programming, it was actually driven by the influence of my peers, right? So they were the ones who actually inspired me to upskill myself and explore the world of coding, I would say. So while pursuing my MBA, I realized that technology was rapidly evolving, right? It was becoming a very integral part of almost every industry. I also recognize that you know learning a programming skill could kind of enhance my career prospects because I was basically, I mean, I always had an interest in programming. Obviously, I did start my journey with web development, so it was not a very difficult thing for me to learn programming, I would say. So I obviously opted to use platforms like Coursera and EDX as my learning platform. So they did provide me with the flexibility and the and I was able to get access to knowledge and learn programming languages like Python. I did also learn a lot of other languages like R Studio. So these courses kind of they did allow me to study at my own pace. It also and I was able to explore a wide range of programming topics with these online platforms, right? So I believe that online learning is a very it's a very fantastic resource for anybody who is looking to acquire new skills and knowledge. However, one very important thing that I did realize that online certifications alone, they don't guarantee you a job. While certificates demonstrate your theoretical knowledge, right? They are just one piece of the puzzle. Practical experience in the field is equally important, if not crucial, I would say. This actually brought to the challenge that I did encounter during my job search, particularly regarding my technical expertise, right? So as a non-technical person, breaking into the tech industry was, I mean, it actually required more than just theoretical knowledge and certifications, right? Doing a bunch of online courses on Python is not going to land you a job in the tech industry. So it actually required a little bit more work. I had to basically demonstrate my portfolio I had to basically, I did a lot of practical projects. I had to showcase my skills. I had to basically convince the recruiters that I am that person who can also do programming, and I did possess, a lot of skills. And what happened is I did take on some of my personal coding projects. I did collaborate with open source initiatives. I did participate in hackathons. So those kind of things, they did allow me to gain some hands-on experience, and it also helped me demonstrate my technical abilities to potential employers, I would say. So my decision to learn, programming languages like Python, I would say, it was actually driven by the need to also adapt to adapt to a changing job market. It was becoming very competitive. My peers had a lot of years of experience. They also came up with a lot of technical skills, and I realized that okay, I also need to scale up as soon as possible. So yeah, that's what I would say my journey was.
So were your peers majorly coming from engineers who made you, or what was like? Help us
I
understand that part
think
because.
I think
Hmm,
70 to 75% of my batchmates did have a technical background. They did
right.
have a lot of technical expertise. They were coming from engineering backgrounds, or they worked in a tech company. So I
So
had
it's,
to overcome
mhm.
this challenge of proving my technical expertise in a very competitive job market. So
Interesting. So, when you, for example, decide that okay, it's more of the peers who come from a similar background, right? So, if you are among artists, you would aspire to become artist. If you are again engineers, you might, for example, brush across an engineer. If you're with great sportsman, you would like to become a great sportsman. But how was it like? Did someone, for example, come up and tell, "Go, is Python the best place?" Why exactly Python was your choice? Why not, for example, go beyond it? Why didn't you, since you come from a web design and you had an exposure of web design or way more or less, I would say the front end side of things, way early in your life, fortunate to your father's decision to expose you to that. Why Python? Was it more of the fact that it was fascinating with respect to data side parts of thing, or was what was what brought you to more close to Python?
yeah, so data science was the reason why I was inclined to Python. I think the first programming language that I learned during that particular period was actually R and R Studio. That's something that I did learn during the as part of the online learning platform. But then I did realize from my peers that Python was basically the programming language that was used in the industry. And that's when I decided to learn Python during my MBA times. Obviously, after my MBA, I did learn a lot of other programming languages, including web frameworks, front-end development, including Angular, React, and all of those stuff. But yeah, during my MBA days, Python was that language to learn if you want to excel in the field of data science. So
Right. So now, from while we are inside this, you then end up landing doing an internship with Sutherland, the
mhm,
company that you currently work with.
mhm.
What brought you there, and what was the kind of project that you started your journey as an intern with them?
Okay, so my journey with Sutherland began with a leap of faith, both on their parts and mine. So Sutherland was one of those few tech companies that actually shortlisted me. And what actually made it unique was that they actually focused solely on my performance during the interview process. So they were not really bothered about my previous internships or the brand names in my resume, I would say. They were kind of genuinely interested, and they did provide me the chance to basically gain valuable tech experience. And I do remember my interview with Sutherland. They basically told me like, come here, join us for 2 months, 2 to 3 months, learn uh, what you can from uh, from your internship. And I thought it was a really good opportunity. I recognized the potential in this approach, and I gladly accepted the internship offer that was extended to be to me by Sutherland. So during my time at Sutherland, I was part of the IT service excellence team, which was actually a team that was dedicated to ensuring that the company's IT services were actually delivered uh, with the highest level of quality and efficiency. So my role with this particular team, it actually primarily involved around reporting and analytics, which, as you might know, they are actually very crucial part of the tech-driven any tech-driven organization. So one of my significant contributions during my internship at Sutherland was actually uh, in the world of data visualization and reporting. So I had the privilege of working on projects that involved creating Power BI reports and reports and dashboards for the IT operations team. So this was a very exciting and challenging task, I would say, because it did allow me to apply my technical skills to a real world scenario. So Power BI, for all those who are unfamiliar with it, it's actually a powerful analytic solution that's actually provided by Microsoft, which allows you to basically make visuals and share insights across the organization. And it's not just about creating fancy charts. It's all about the storytelling skills, right? You can make fancy charts, you can put some numbers in the report, but at the end of the day, you need to those reports need to tell a story. And then obviously I had the skill where I was able to kind of tell, or I was able to put my story across the entire leadership team at Sutherland. So working on these kind of projects, they kind of help me, so the way how I would kind of put it is that it's not just about translating raw data into a language that everybody could understand. You, at the end of the day, you need to enable better decision making within all the levels of the company, and I think that is what I did. So my internship at Sutherland, it was a very fascinating learning experience for me, not just in terms of the technical skills, not just because I learned Power BI, but I also got to know how a global tech company would actually function. And I was able to understand numbers. I was able to understand how the entire organization would work. And at the end of the day, I was able to make a very valuable contribution to the company. And that's how I also ultimately landed a job at Sutherland.
So I would love to go deeper in understanding the kind of problem statement. You use two words, right? Storytelling,
Mhm.
extremely important. While you're end of the day doing some kind of an IT operations support and creating dashboard for that. Help us understand what how exactly did you approach your internship project? What was this all about, and how exactly did that create an impact? The kind of impact which ultimately asked people and companies like Sutherland to absorb and go ahead with offering an intern a full time role. Help us with that, please.
Yes. So my internship, like I said, it did involve creating reports for the IT team. So during that particular time, you know, the teams they were basically using various dashboards and metrics. There were metrics like SLAs, OLAs. There were basically metrics like how much of time did it take to resolve a particular incident. So there were various metrics, and one very important thing that you need to understand that some of those metrics make sense for based on the different levels of the organization, right? So for example, somebody who was basically working on resolving an issue, right? They need to be aware of a certain set of metrics. Somebody who was a middle manager, they had a very specific set of metrics. And somebody who was in the leaderships, they wanted to understand a certain set of metrics. As an example here, somebody who's in the leadership, right? They would want to understand how many issues were kind of reported, how many issues were kind of resolved. Uh, they wanted to understand things like how many critical issues versus non-critical issues, things like that. Whereas somebody who is an engineer, they might want to know things about SLAs and OLAs, whether they were able to meet the compliance, whether they were able to resolve the issue within the specified SLA and things like that. So you can't have a single dashboard for all the audience. And I think the very important aspect here is that I was able to kind of build out dashboards for different audience, and they were able to basically understand and improve their own work. So I think that was basically the thing that I was involved with, and I think that kind of contributed to the organization's growth, I would say so.
So, how did you plug in the storytelling side of thing? I understand what you did right here is
Hmm.
you understood that there's a persona.
Yeah.
When you understand the user's persona, you're going to tailor the conversation
Mhm.
accordingly. So, more or less, you put that into place.
Mhm.
Uh, what were some of the changes that you brought in? Which, to be honest, today, if there's a data analyst, we often assume and we look at, okay, I'm making a dashboard for the marketing team, or I'm making a dashboard, in your case, could be an IT support team. The team is what we define the persona as. There's a marketeer who's supposed to be creative. It may be, for example, for the purpose of PPC, versus it may be purpose for SEO. There's a
Yep.
drastically different side of metrics that you might be tracking, and he would be morely interested in other aspects, right? So, what exactly were your approach to this when you went deeper in understanding the persona that you were going and basically serving to?
I think this is where I think like the example that you gave, obviously some of my experience in marketing kind of helped. Obviously, different audience have different requirements, and it's very important for people to have a very customized experience. And the approach from day one was very simple. I did understand that different personas required different set of dashboards, and the approach that I kind of took is basically trying to understand the audience need, right? So the way how I kind of approached this was basically working with all the three different levels of management, trying to understand what their need is, and then basically designing dashboards based on their requirements. So that's how I would kind of put the approach as.
So, what I understand, and to be honest, correct me right now if someone listening and he, to be honest, is a developer, right? We often basically pick up the more of the scope of the project,
Mhm.
and then that's where we jump in and say, okay, this is the feature we want to build, and we down there and we look
Mhm.
only at the logics and possible ways to implement those features which needs to be listed. Now, today, what you are advising to engineers out there is more or less beyond feature. Understand who is the consumer here.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
is that something that you feel right now is an interjection? Earlier, we assumed that the product managers would only do this, or maybe, for example, the marketing managers would do it, and then you are more of a support function here
Mhm.
for them. What's your take? What should a guy who's ideally building his career in the world of tech, irrespective whether he's a developer or he's maybe an analyst kind of a role, what would your approach then be? What would be your advice be?
I think my approach there would be that obviously you need to understand different perspectives. The product manager would kind of think at a particular problem in a different way versus how a designer would approach is completely different. And the engineer would actually approach this problem in a completely different way. So I think it's very important to understand different perspectives. And I think there is no one right perspective, I would say. Uh, Different people can have different perspective about the same problem, and I think what is more important is that you need to understand all of these perspectives and then solve the problem. So
Interesting. So now that I understand that you're there inside Sutherland and you're building and really working on the analytics space, I think you also worked in a very interesting chatbot, right? You had done an extremely development of building a chatbot back in Sutherland. Can you help us understand a little bit about the project of chatbot that you picked up? What was the ultimate impact that it brought to the organization at large?
that's a very good question. So the chatbot project that I worked, it was basically the first project that I worked when I joined full time at Sutherland. And it was that one particular project that had a very significant impact within the company. So when I first joined Sutherland, one of the uh, projects that I worked was this particular internal chatbot. Okay, so this chatbot was specifically designed to serve our employees, offering them a very seamless and an efficient way to interact with company functions and then access very important information. Uh, so maybe just to give you some overview about what were the applications here, right? Firstly, it actually allowed employees to create, things like support tickets very effortlessly, instead of navigating through very complex systems within the company, like submitting forms. They could simply engage with a chatbot, describe their issue, and then create a support ticket. And my goal was to basically streamline the process and then reduce the time it actually took for an employee to seek assistance, right? And also the chatbot was also kind of designed to basically answer questions from the knowledge resources within the company. So there was various IT policies, HR policies, procedures. So employees, so the employees could inquire about various HR policies, IT guidelines, or they could ask any internal regulations. If they had any questions, they could just ask the bot, and then the bot would basically answer that question immediately. And it's also not just about answering question. It actually helped, answer very simple, simple tasks. For example, if they want to know when the next holiday is, right, they can just go and ask the chatbot, and the chatbot would you know, basically tell when the next holiday was, or how much of leave balance was there for a particular employee, things like that. So it's a very complex system in the backend, but at the end of the day, for the employees, it was a very simple system that they could basically use. And obviously, it had a huge impact. Almost all the employees within the company had used this chatbot for basically some reason or the other, whether it's for creating a support case or whether it's for asking a particular question, right? Obviously, the chatbot had a huge impact. Obviously, this particular chatbot product was a very important part of my career, because currently in my role as director of engineering for Sutherland's conversational AI team, this particular chatbot did play a very huge role. Now I do, though this particular chatbot, this particular chatbot was an internal facing chatbot, right? Now I work on, developing chatbot for a lot of our customers. And obviously with this particular chatbot project, I was able to kind of showcase my technical, experience, as well as my, other soft skills. So yeah, so this particular chatbot project did play a very huge role, and it had a huge impact across the organization.
Oh, interesting. So what you've done is you've simplified the life of an HR, to be honest,
Yes.
to the extent. So I think the HRs, and that makes you a good go-to guy for all the HRs, and that's where I think all the HRs loved it. So it is overall impactful. So all these questions which earlier was being answered as an HR help desk is now automated. Interesting. I think what you've done is pretty a good way. To be honest, I think you might have gone through the right now. The buzz is all about Apple's way to basically present their green report, that they came out and did a minute of a video, and they gave the all those clean energy. I don't know if they've seen that. It's a very interesting way to give out a very long report in a 1.5 minute video and still make people basically look at things at a larger context. You don't bore people, you basically excite them, and during the whole journey you also keep them extremely engaged. Interesting. I look at more of a thing that actually comes back to the fact that you're a marketer at a heart, while you understand tech. Interesting. So beyond this, when you've gone ahead, and I assume that chatbot project seems to be a vital part, and somewhere a lot of learnings of those are implemented day in and day out. Can you give us a walkthrough of what you're building right now, what your team is doing, and what overall I would say Sutherland is out really to make an impact in the world at this point?
Okay, so I currently manage a team of really talented developers where we work on building conversational AI solutions. So conversational AI solutions is not just about chatbots. I think let me first start there. So chatbots are very interesting tools. They kind of help reduce the number of support tickets. It does help answer questions. Now, obviously, with generative AI, right, with tools like ChatGPT, this field is exploding like anything, right? So one very important thing is that chatbots is just a subset of conversational AI. Conversational AI also includes solutions like voice bots, where you analyze voice conversations and then you basically build solutions around voice. This includes, obviously, most of you must be familiar with solutions like IVR, voice bots, or even Google Assistants, things like that, right? So we also work in the area of voice bots. Another thing is that we also work on building NLP solutions, which may not be customer facing, but more of contact center agent facing, I would say. So agents who kind of pick up calls, or if they pick up chat requests, right? We do build agent assist solutions, which does leverage natural language understanding to basically assist the agent in real time during a particular conversations. For example, this is a Zoom meeting, right? You might have real-time transcription features. So we do work on building out real-time transcription features. We do work on, agent assist solutions. And then finally, when it comes to insights, right? Obviously, at the end of the day, you need to understand You need to understand how your operations is doing. You need to derive insights out of these raw text. So this can be chat transfer, this can be voice call. So at the end of the day, you need to understand how, or you would need to derive insights so that you can basically improve the operations of a contact center. So we do that one too. So all of this kind of combined, and they do form this particular field of conversational AI, which deals with building NLP solutions for various use cases.
So right now, while I understand, and thanks a lot for explaining that to the viewers today, that conversational AI is not chatbot. I think it's something that often people the experience that today generative AI has brought into the picture is transformed how we had the experience with chatbots. Right, a lot of us now say that SEO is going to be dead and it's all going to be generative AI taking up over. Google's going to have a tough time fighting it out with ChatGPT and platforms like these as these evolve. But understanding this, if you can help us a little bit for viewership, more or less, that today, for example, when these statements really come out, that SEO is going to be dead or these things gradually going to be dead, help us a little bit more about how exactly can someone, if today I'm someone who's doing an internship in a very similar way and go out and really work across with companies, and I'm also responsible. I'm a similar state where I'm responsible to automate certain aspects of businesses. Maybe in your example, you went in and did it for the HR, and you basically got the overall knowledge management system in terms of the employee handbook automated. How can you help us understand if tomorrow can we also leverage generative AI? If yes, what could be the approach if at a high level?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, and uh, I think one must understand that generative AI is still in its early stages. Uh, I would say, though this year, we have seen the tools like ChatGPT or basically Bart, right? If you want to basically apply this particular solution like generative AI uh, in a to basically solve a real world problem, it's not easy. Okay, and let me just take an example of a chatbot, right? So a lot of people kind of say that the most important thing in a chatbot is actually the NLP. Okay, my answer to that particular statement is that it is not. It's all about user experience at the end of the day. You can have a chatbot without even NLP. Okay, but if you basically have to have a really good chatbot, it's all about the user experience. So when I say user experience when it comes to chatbot, it's about how the look and feel of the chatbot is. It's about the flow, right? At the end of the day, the end user must be able to navigate the chatbot dish, and when they ask a particular question, right, obviously the chatbot must respond back. So user experience is actually one of the very key aspects when it comes to conversational AI. And when it comes to generative AI also, it is the same thing. You can basically deploy a generative AI solution anywhere. You can, those APIs are very straightforward to use, but at the end of the day, if your generative AI solution gives answers, if it is not giving the right answers, right, then your solution is not solving anything, right? If it hallucinates, there's a lot of things when it comes to generative AI that a lot of people do not understand. Okay, how do you basically build very secure and generative AI solutions? Okay, how do you basically ensure that your generative AI solution is compliant with local rules and regulations? How do you basically build secure solutions? How do you basically build multilingual generative AI solutions? So one of the things that I would give as a feedback is that the way how the industry is looking at this at generative AI is that they're kind of trying to classify this into three buckets, right? Low risk, medium risk, and high risk solutions. Now, low risk is where you can basically have a very single application of generative AI, where you can basically solve a very simple problem using generative AI. And let me just give you a very classic example where we are basically trying to use generative AI to basically summarize a conversation. Let's assume if it was this particular call, right? You can use generative AI to kind of summarize this particular conversation. That's a very closed use case, and obviously, it's a very low risk. Whereas you can also build a solution like ChatGPT and then expose it to the internet. That's a very high risk solution, and then obviously things can go wrong. A lot of issues can happen, and then obviously, you may not be able to, get the value out of the solution. So very important thing that I would, I mean, the biggest takeaway here is that you need to uh, understand generative AI and the industry a lot better if you have to basically get into this particular field. I was lucky enough to get into the space of conversational AI 5 years back with my chatbot project. And then when generative AI came this year, I was well prepared for the industry. So I think the takeaway here is that you need to be prepared and you need to understand how to solve real world problems. That's the takeaway that I would say.
So you mentioned about an interesting term of called hallucination. Can you help us understand what exactly what does it actually? We understand hallucination in
Mhm.
terms of the real world. What happens in the world of generative AI that your NLP starts hallucinating. Help us understand that part.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of these terminologies which are, which are actually related to the term hallucination. There are things like jailbreaking. There are things like prompt injection. Okay, it all kind of comes under this particular umbrella term that I would kind of. I mean, the literature on this is still evolving, but I think when you basically say the term hallucination, that is when you ask a particular question to an LLM model, right? And if the LLM model is actually giving a response that it is not intended to do, that is what you call as hallucination. Obviously, there are different versions and different aspects here. Obviously, there is something called prompt injection. That is when the LLM model kind of gives away the system prompt, or it actually gives away the rules. So there was a very classic example of a Microsoft Bing chat, which was actually giving away its rules, right? And if you know the rules of a chatbot, you can just break it, you can hack it, you can basically, give the response that it's not intended to do. So that's how I would kind of describe hallucination and prompt injection. So
Right. Because a lot of right now, since we operate in the world of recruitment, and we've seen that there are a lot of interesting companies which are now working in terms of the startup space, which are actually built in terms of LLM and to be honest, in generative. And their major, I would say, the basically the fundamental or the backbone is generative AI kind of model, and that's where they jump in and often put these questions, and so it would be helpful for the users right now. Moving on, right now, I also understand that Bharat, you would also be looking at scaling the team, and you would also be responsible to identify if the person who actually would be joining in is the right person. What's your mantra of looking at a candidate, or why? What's your mantra of taking an interview? What's your good to have, must have kind of a skill that you look at?
So when I look for when I look around for a candidate to join my team, right, I actually take into several factors. Okay, I would kind of start with maybe technical competence. Okay, so at the end of the day, the candidate should basically possess the necessary tech skills and knowledge relevant to that particular position that I'm basically hiring for, right? So I do evaluate, I do look at their degree, their certifications, and see if they have a proven track record of success in similar roles. So that is basically the primary skill that I kind of look at. But as somebody who is from a non-technical background, I do look at their learning ability. So the pace of change in today's world, right? It is actually very astonishing, right? So I can't find somebody with generative AI experience for the last 10 years, right? Obviously, generative AI is a very new field. So what I kind of look at is I do look at their ability to learn something new and basically to adapt to change. I do ask them a lot of questions about the latest technologies, the trends, and see how far they are able to catch up with the landscape. So that is something that I do look at. Obviously, soft skills also play a very important role. So no one works in a very isolated environment anymore, right? Though most of us might be working from home, right? I think teamwork and collaborations are still fundamental in almost every industry. So I do look for candidates who not only possess strong interpersonal skills, but also have a very they do have a very good track record of being very effective in a team. And I do look at their ability to communicate, listen. One of the very common things that I do see in an interview is that people do not listen, right? When I ask a question, they don't have the patience. They keep on talking. They don't see if they are really answering question that the interviewer is asking. So that's a very important skill. People should have the patience to kind of listen. And then finally, the last thing that I would kind of put is obviously problem solving and the critical thinking. At the end of the day, we are developing very innovative solutions for the market, and I do kind of look for candidates who have very good problem solving skills, and they need to be a very critical thinker. So I think one of the important things that I do also seek is that candidates can have setbacks, they can have challenges, right? There could be career gaps. And I think if candidates are able to kind of justify, okay, what was the reason why they did have setbacks, and if they are able to learn from that, okay, that's something that I obviously love with candidates. Okay, I do like candidates. I mean, so there are a couple of entrepreneurs in my team. So they did start up something on their own. They must have failed after a couple of years, but they did have a good learning. So I do also look for candidates who had a very good amount of learning, I would say.
Interesting. I think, Bharat, it was pretty a great question. I come to the last segment of the questions that I have. It's more of a rapid fire. So quick response from your end. School life, college life?
College life.
Delhi or Bangalore?
Bangalore.
Hustle culture or a chill life?
I think I do enjoy more of chill life right now.
And the question of the day, programming or marketing?
At this moment, I would say marketing.
Oh, interesting. So you still remain marketer at heart, but you practice programming as your profession. Interesting.
Yep.
But yeah, I know what you're doing right now is a lot of that is putting into your ability to really understand the consumer and end of the day build products and solutions accordingly. So
Yep.
somewhere you're also solving marketing as a part of day in and day out. To move on, I'll just take a couple of questions that we've got. We've got 4 questions, I think, but I'll take up a couple of questions from here. The questions that have come from the audience. The first being that, what's your take on today's companies' setback of not having freshers? A lot of, I think, it's a challenge right now. You understand the economy and overall change in terms of the recruitment landscape. A lot of people have kept a very strong criteria of 1 to 2 years. So folks who've just passed out or are looking to pass out, how do you think they should prepare well in days to come?
Okay, I think a very important thing is that you need to look at it from the eyes of the recruiter, right? They are basically trying to have, somebody who will be able to kind of do a job. So I think the first thing that I would kind of recommend is that you need to look at it from the eye of a recruiter, and you need to basically have a very convincing story of why the recruiter should basically hire you. Now, if you don't have that particular story, right, if you have very basics, then I think the easiest way to get a job is actually to get into an internship. So don't worry about the salary. Don't worry about whether it's a big brand name, right? I did not go for, I mean, a lot of people kind of ask me, why did you not join any of the big fours or any of the biggest tech players in the market? And my answer to that very simple question is obviously learning was more important to me. Okay. So obviously I am very, very happy with the role that I have at Sutherland. I was able to learn a lot of tech skills. Maybe I might not have got this opportunity elsewhere, but I think the most important thing for freshers I would recommend is please learn skills. Please don't worry about the brand name. Join a company where you can basically learn things. That is what I would kind of recommend.
Interesting. So the stories stand out. Create a story for yourself. I think that's the highlight, that be it a marketing guy or a tech guy, you need to sell stories. Interesting. And now people, like a lot of people predominantly either would like to move out and really enter the space of a conversational AI, or predominantly would like to start their career into conversational. What do you think are the must-have skills to really succeed in this kind of a in I would say in a niche industry in its own?
Okay, I think in terms of conversational AI, if you were to ask me, tech skills is not really the number one priority. I would say it's more about understanding the customer's problem. Right? I'll kind of talk a little bit about the tech skills, but I think you need to understand what kind of problem you're going to kind of solve using conversational AI. And like I said, conversational AI is not just about chatbots, right? There is a lot of NLP-driven solutions that you can kind of develop. And I think the first important thing is that you need to have the ability to understand real world problems. Okay. And then in terms of tech skills, obviously, you would need to understand a little bit about programming. This kind of depends upon where you want to be in terms of conversational AI. If you want to be more of I mean, if you are front end developer, right? If you want to be a front end developer in conversational AI, then you need to understand how do you make very intuitive user interfaces. That requires you to learn things like programming. I mean, you would need to understand programming languages like React, Angular. If you want to be in the backend side, obviously you need to understand backend frameworks. It can be Python or actually Node.js, or if you want to get into the ML side of conversational AI, right? Obviously, you would need to understand programming languages like Python, but also you would need to understand how NLP solutions. How do you basically measure the performance of an NLP solution? That's one of my standard questions that I ask anybody who wants to get into the field of conversational AI. How do you measure and how do you know whether your NLP solution is good or bad? Right. So these kind of things you would need to understand, and obviously there's a lot of online courses available to learn these kind of things, and I would recommend all of you to kind of check out all these courses that is available online.
Interesting. I think thanks a lot, Bharat, for responding to these questions. I think we've almost basically overshot the time. When we started the discussion, Bharat had a lot of challenges whether he would be able to answer this, and would ideally we would actually be wrapping up quickly. But to be honest, it's good that Bharat we've short the time. And in order to basically before I let you go, I just wanted to basically put what we basically come across as learnings. And so, interestingly, what you've shared today so far has been pretty interesting. That statistics becomes the love and is the reason for you to really get out and really do what you're doing right now. So, interestingly, marketeers turned engineers, statistics is your new catalyst. That's what we as viewers learned today. Apart from that, I think you interestingly spoke very high of one aspect, that even if you're out there to build, end of the day, who are you building for? Who is your consumer? If the more you understand, the deeper you get, the better you solve. That is where I think it's been your guru mantra, and that's, to be honest, has is playing its own part each day in your life. And the third most important thing that I learned today was, even when you are out there, if you do not know, do not know, just say it on the word, but have an ability to listen to folks, even if you're there for an interview. You don't need to answer the questions correctly; you just need to understand people first.
Yep.
So I think these were my three major learnings from you and your journey, Bharat. And I'm pretty sure there would be many more for folks who joined us today. We really are thankful for you to join us today. Any parting words from your end?
Yeah, I think it was a really great conversation today. I think I was glad that I was able to share some of my experience, and I hope the viewers of this particular webinar, I hope you were able to get some insights about how conversational AI works, and also how my journey kind of began into this particular field. So thank you, Zain. I think this was a really good conversation. So looking forward for more conversations like this.
Awesome. Glad we definitely will have you again. And to be honest, in the next conversation, we're going to prick your brain and really go inside on how exactly you guys are building generative AI for folks like us who just use it as a consumer day in and day out. Really love the kind of basically convenience that generative AI today has brought. As you mentioned, it's all about the user experience, and the user experience that the other chatbots versus the generative AI chatbots have brought in is vastly different. And I feel that's where the whole tick off and predominantly the adoption has increased. But really, thanks a lot, Bharat. It was really pleasure having you here. Hope to have you soon, and maybe have some kind of an in-person chat with you as well.
So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining in for Beyond Code. We look to have, and we aim to bring in folks like Bharat again very soon in the next week as well, and to uncover the stories which actually make them what they're doing, and uncover some of the great work that these folks are doing. Thanks a lot for joining us.